Okay. Well, everyone, welcome to our first Employers and Residents Chat of Fall 2022. Can't believe we're in fall 2022. I want to thank Christopher Nelson for being with us today. And I just want to read a little bit about Christopher and a little bit about his bio. He's done a lot of things. He's the Director of Talent Relations and Recruitment for NewsNation, which is based in Chicago. He helps manage the recruitment of on-air and off-air talent for NewsNation and provides coaching and mentoring to staff on career growth and development, advises network leadership on strategic priorities. He also supports NewsNation and parent company Nextstar's diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts. Christopher joined NewsNation in June 2020 and initially served as weekend managing editor, helping to oversee the network's weekend coverage and contributing to the planning of special projects such as Election 2020 and the presidential inauguration. Previously, he was a coordinating producer at MSNBC and a contributing writer for the digital platform NBC BLK. He also served as both senior editor and as an assignment editor at NBC News, managing the network's network news desk overnight. In a previous stint with NBC News, Nelson was a researcher on the network news desk, and he joined NBC News as part of the highly regarded News Associates program. Finally, Christopher earned a bachelor's degree in communications from Loyola University, Maryland, and a master's degree in law from Georgetown University Law Center. So that means he is a Hoya. He is also a member of the National Association of Black Journalists and the Online News Association. So Christopher, thank you so much for being here today. And I know that I've missed a lot of things, but I know that you will just tell me all the things that I missed and help us get to know you and NewsNation.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Jackie, for having me. I'm always delighted to talk to fellow Hoyas. So yes, as you said, I graduated from the Law Center with my master's degree actually 10 years ago. So it's been a little bit of a minute. But yeah, I started my career in journalism right out of undergrad. So I graduated from Loyola in May of 2008, and then I started my career about 2 months later. So I am a big proponent of early career training programs. So my first job out of college was actually at WJZ, the CBS-owned station in Baltimore. And so they had back then a 6-month apprenticeship called the Broadcast Apprentice Program. And so you did 2 months filling in with the digital team as a digital producer. You spent 2 months as assistant assignment desk as a desk assistant, and 2 months as a news writer. And so then after that 6-month stint, they kept me on as a freelance news writer for another 18 months. And because I was a freelance news writer, like coming in 5 days a week, 1 to 6 p.m., writing for the evening shows, kind of surreal because I was writing for the anchors and reporters I grew up watching, but I was also able to fill in on the assignment desk. I was able to fill in the digital department. I was able to fill in as an AP on different shows, including the morning show. And so that was really my foundation. And that was the first job out of college. And so that was pretty pivotal. And then 2 years into that, I applied on a lark to the NBC News Associates program, which is a program created by the then Senior Vice President for Talent, Elena Nachmanoff. And it was designed to get producers of color into the pipeline. Network news lacked diversity in a lot of senses. And so she wanted to create a program that would create a pipeline. And so the year I applied in 2010, something like 1,500 people applied for the program, and then they selected 7 of us. And so 7 of us moved to New York as a cohort, as a class, and we did spent the next year also doing a rotational program. And that one was a year-long rotational program where you spent 4 3-month periods at a couple of different assignments. I think I got like the 2.5 assignments before they were like, oh, you worked on that assignment desk before. You should come work on that assignment desk. So that's how I ended my time at NBC and at News Associates program as a researcher. And then I had applied to graduate school as a backup plan because in case I didn't get picked up by NBC, and NBC wanted me to stay, but I applied to the master's in law program because at the time it was geared towards journalists. And funny enough, they were ending the program because not enough journalists were doing it. And so they told me, we're ending the program. And then they wrote me back, psych, you could be the last person to do it full time. And so I did it full time. So I moved back home to Baltimore and commuted over from August of 21 until May of 2012, August of 2011 until May of 2012, and did the year-long master's program. I always tell people I don't use that master's that often anymore, but it was one of the most pivotal points in my life because it definitely taught me a lot about the law. It taught me a lot about history, but it taught you pretty practical and basic skills about learning how to synthesize complex topics, which is important for a journalist to do. And so I don't regret it. It was really cool to go to classes. Like Paul Butler, who now is full-time at the Law Center, was one of my professors, scared me crapless every time I had to go into his class. But it prepared me to go and to do this, even the second time at NBC. And also I took like higher education law, and I then became an adjunct professor. But also, like, as you know, like a lot of things in higher ed come up in the news cycle. So having that kind of real life expertise, and seeing how things are intersectional in nature, and the law often intersects with politics and culture and race and society, like learning in that big macro way and in micro ways as well, really does help me as a journalist. I just don't always have to go look up things on Pacer or read Supreme Court decisions, but still the skills every day help me for sure. So yeah, so I did that, did the master's at the Law Center, and then I returned. I always wanted to return to journalism. So I went back to NBC News for the second stint in January 2013, and I then spent 7.5 years there. So as you mentioned, I was a assignment editor. Ran a national desk overnight. It was trial by fire. There were times when they would leave me at like 11 p.m. by myself to literally monitor the entire United States of America and Latin America, and then also be a gut check for our friends in London, who sometimes did not know what American news audiences would want. So I did that by myself, and it was great because I learned a lot. It taught me how ignorant I was, but it also taught me how to like learn things. I always tell people my first big story going back to NBC the second time was actually Oscar Pistorius killing his girlfriend Rita Steenkamp, and I literally saw a wire cross, and I was like, "This is kind of wild." And it was 2013, so it was right after the 2012 Olympics. I was like, "The Today Show did 50 million stories on Oscar Pistorius." I'm like, "This is a big deal." So I messaged the senior producer at the Today Show, and I said, "Did London tell you about this story?" London had not flagged them to the story. I was the one that flagged them to the story. And he was like, "No, but thanks for the flag." And then I'm like on Twitter. Yes, even back then on Twitter, because a breaking news story. Where do you go? You go to Twitter. And I saw a Olympic commentator talking about it. And he was like, "I'm not even home. I'm in New Jersey." And I'm like, "New Jersey?" So I DM'd him and said, "If I get you a call, will you come be on the Today Show?" We booked him a car. He came and he led the Today Show both the 7 and 8 o'clock hours. So that was kind of my first test and big story where which showed them that I was thinking quickly on my feet, that I knew how to produce and help them to produce the lead story. And so it was 4.5 years of doing that, of like literally monitoring the news overnight and making sure we were set up to cover it. And so I did that for 4.5 years, started by myself, and then eventually they were like, "He does a lot for one person." So eventually I started adding members to my team. So I got a social media reporter that I managed, and then I got a desk assistant that I managed. And so social news gathering became really important. And thank goodness I had someone who knew more about it than me. I could do a little bit of clearing UGC, but it was really important to have someone that was really kind of an expert and really studying and understanding how social news gathering was more important. So I had that person as a partner. He's still a dear friend who I tell people I'm responsible for his good traits. But it was really good to have that resource. And then the desk assistant. And one of my desk assistants is still one of my mentees to this day, and she's now a White House producer for NBC. And so helping to train them and give them the basics was really pivotal and important to me. But it also showed people I had leadership potential, right? And so that kind of is what led me to my next opportunity. So after that, after doing the national desk for 4.5 years, MSNBC came a calling, and they had never had a coordinated producer for weekends, and they asked me to do it. They were like, "You get editorial, you get logistics, you have relationships with folks." And so I spent the next 3 years doing logistics and planning and news gathering for MSNBC weekends in particular, as the network continued to grow weekend programming. So I don't know, probably up to either double to triple fold the number of hours we did live on the weekend. So we needed someone that had an editorial planned, and I did that. Like every week I said, okay, these are the things happening Saturday and Sunday across like in domestically, internationally. Here are the type of reporting resources we have available. These are the correspondence that we had available. Or if we don't have correspondence, here are some guest suggestions for people we can book. Or here's a live picture we can get. And so I always had to come up with a plan and then be solution oriented so that producers had options, right? So I spent 3 years doing that. And then in the spring of 2020, my contract was up, and I said, "I don't think I want to do this for another 3 years. I need to explore some other opportunities." And it was kind of scary and intimidating. I had spent most of my professional life at NBC News and MSNBC, but I was like, I'm not 24 years old, the same age I was when I went there the first time. And in order to reinvent myself and redefine how they see me and make require me to leave. And so I started exploring opportunities, and then the pandemic happened, and I'm like, I might not be able to get out of here. I might have to resign. And then this thing called NewsNation was starting, and I had applied because I saw it on LinkedIn. So LinkedIn is very important, people. I saw it on LinkedIn, and I said, huh, that description, I've done half those things, though probably I did 99% of those things. So I said, I'm just going to apply on a lot. Applied, completely forgot. A colleague called me and said, hey, we saw your resume. You still interested? I said, I guess so, or whatever. And so that conversation went well. And he was like, okay, I like you. Can you talk to some more people? Then another conversation went well. Then the third conversation was with the then vice president of news and news director. And all along, I would just say no one was telling me what they were interviewing me for. They were just interviewing me, and I wanted what for. But I also made it clear to them I was a little bit established. So I was not just going to move up with my life and move halfway across the country for just any old producer job. The next day, after talking to the vice president and of news and the news director, she called me and asked me to come to Chicago and become the weekend managing editor for NewsNation. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. Are you sure? Um, but the thing that kind of sold me on it was I had always aspired to work for a startup because I knew it as a unique opportunity to learn more, to do more, and to prove myself in a different way. Because I checked the box of working in established media, like a legacy station like WJZ in Baltimore. It's the station that gave us Oprah and Gail. You don't get more legendary and epic than that, right? And then working at NBC inside 30 Rock. And I didn't tell you about a big 30 Rock story. Like 2 years before I worked there, I literally went to New York for like the second time ever in my life. And I was staying by the UN doing a workshop and walked over to 30 Rock and stood outside and said, I'm going to work there one day. And I worked there not once, but twice. And so I do believe in signs. And so when my then boss called me to offer me the role, and she quoted me back to me. And she said something to me that was really important to me. I always tell bosses, I always ask them one question. I always ask them, what are 3 top qualities you want in a member of your team? Because I say, if they say 3 things that I am, I can do it. If they say 3 things that I am not, I will not be working for them. But also I tell them what I need. And the thing I need is clear direction and autonomy. And she said, I will give you and can guarantee you clear direction and autonomy. And I knew she wasn't just selling me a bill of goods, right? I knew she honestly meant it because she knew I would not accept anything less. And so, yeah, they offered me a role a day to the month my contract at NBC was up. And I was like, YOLO, why not? I had, aspired to work at a startup. I had turned down jobs before because I didn't want to move. And at some point, I'm a mama's boy from Baltimore. So being in Chicago is still an adjustment. But my mother had told me, Christopher, they're airplanes. And so when this woman said, hey, we want you to come and do that, I said, okay, my mother does say Christopher, they're airplanes. So I gave my notice at NBC, found an apartment via Zillow, had a friend come and FaceTime me from the apartment to make sure I was not about to, live in a crazy place. Love my apartment, by the way. And then I got movers and moved halfway across the country, unsure of what this experiment would be, but knowing that I had things to contribute, right? I had things to add, and that I was going to learn a heck of a lot. And so I did that. 2 years ago, I moved to Chicago to become weekend managing editor for NewsNation. And it was an interesting thing because there was a intersection of people for all different walks of life and different market sizes. Like there were people from small markets, and I looked at them like, how'd you get here? And there were people like me from other networks that were like, okay, we kind of get each other. And there were people that I'm like, oh, you work there. I think I've heard that's a good TV market. And so we all signed up for the same thing, to work at a new news network that was going to try to do news from the center, try to be authentic and genuine, fact-based, and really report the news in a way which we felt would resonate with a large part of the country that doesn't feel like they're being served by the other cable news networks out there. And so a noble mission and pretty a calling for a lot of us. And so it was exciting. It was nerve-wracking at the same time. And so we moved here. Most of us moved here the summer of 2020. We went on the air September 1st, 2020. So we just hit 2 years on the air. We started with 3 hours of programming, 7 nights a week. We now have I forget, it's 13 hours of programming Monday through Friday and 3 hours on weekends. So we've grown exponentially, and we're going to continue to grow. And so it's been exciting to be a part of that. I initially started as a weekend managing editor, so out there running the assignment desk out into the newsroom. And then a year into that, I did what I always do sometimes. I go into my boss's office and just say something. And so I went into my boss's office and I said, hey, you need a recruiter, right? I want a shot. And my boss, I always told, it's really funny. He looked at me and said, have you ever done it before? I said, no, but I'm Christopher Nelson. I'll figure it out. And he said, okay, I'll think about it. And 2 days later, he says, okay, I may give you a trial period, but just know if I give you a trial period, I may bring someone over top of you. And I'm like, I know how this works. That is fine to me. He gave me a trial period and it lasted 2 weeks. And then I was promoted to Director of Talent Relations and Recruitment. And so it is an exciting job. It is definitely at times a nerve-wracking job. It is a higher pressure job, a high stakes job, because I always tell people the places you work, you're only as good as the people you work with. So it's really important to have really good members of your team. And so I take my job seriously, know how important it is. And I tell people my job isn't a sales job. I know some recruiters see it as a sales job. I have purposely gotten good education from liberal arts institutions to not have to go into sales. No shade to those who do, but that is not my calling. But I tell people I see my role as a recruiter as two-pronged. I'm an information gatherer, gathering as much information as possible about candidates and who they are, what they want to do, what motivates them, what skills and characteristics they bring to the table, what makes them unique, and therefore makes them a special add to this and the mix of people we have. And then the information provider, I tell people I'm pretty straight, no chaser, as you guys can see. I'm not going to sell people on a bill of goods. I'm going to provide them as much information as possible for them to ultimately, if we do make them an offer, make the best decision for them about whether they want to come and join this team. And I always say to candidates, I had an interview a short time ago, I do not want to lie to people because I do not want them coming here and saying Christopher Nelson lied to me. That is not the reputation I'm seeking to build. So I'm pretty honest and pretty straight, no chaser, but I think it's important. I think people should genuinely know, who they're talking to, who they're speaking with, the type of environment they want to be in. And then I tell people also my leadership philosophy and style, because I am a leader, right? I'm a director and I run a department of one, but it's still a department. And I tell people my leadership philosophy is to be an ally, an advocate, and an arbiter. And so I want to be an ally to people, whether they already work here or whether people they will potentially come and work here. I'm going to always advocate for you and try to make the case coming in as to what you want to do. So it's not a surprise when you evolve and grow and want to do something. Then I'm an arbiter. There are times when I have to be the bearer of bad news and be someone that gives you a decision you might not like. But because we have that relationship, right? I've been an ally and an advocate. I think you'll respect it and trust me more. And it might not be a thing that you are happy with at the moment, but I think you'll eventually come to like it. And so that's pretty much my career story and my biography. So yeah, Jackie, what else do you want to know?
Oh my gosh. I know, because we were talking a little bit beforehand, so I know that you also have recommendations, like TED Talk recommendations, and you can riff on mentorship and the importance of that. So I guess maybe first, because I know when students are watching this, they might think, okay, so about the stuff, like if I want to join NewsNation. So I guess my question for you is, for those students, are you looking at sophomores, juniors, seniors? Is it more junior seniors? Are you looking at graduate students, in terms of the internships, timelines, deadlines, or all of that? And so if you want to play in that space, you can go there.
Okay. So the only thing I don't run here is the internship program, but we just started the internship program. So we're now in our second semester of having interns. And so the best thing for folks that are in DC will probably be look next summer at our summer internship program. And I think we're open to sophomores, juniors, and seniors. I think we had probably more juniors and seniors this particular year, but I think we're open. Sophomore would probably be the cutoff. That'd probably be the lowest we would go, but we're definitely open. I'll definitely send you a link to just the generic description. It probably says fall because we just got our fall class, but it was the same qualifications for next semester. But I would say for undergrads, definitely our summer internship program will be a good opportunity. And we have most of our interns based here, but I do think we've had an intern or two based in Washington as well. And so I'll make sure you guys have the information. Look, internships are really important. I did my first internship when I was 17. We didn't even lead with that. I did my first internship when I was 17 years old at the ABC station in Baltimore. It was a program called the Teen Media Project. And so we literally produced a 30-minute monthly newscast. And I say that because the funny thing is, so when I was a senior in high school and he was a freshman in high school, as now one of my correspondents. And how do you think that happened? Because he maintained relationships. So internships is important because it helps you to maintain relationships, but it also helps you get really good practical experience. And I always tell people you're learning what not to do as much as you're learning what to do when you have an internship experience. But that hands-on experience is pivotal because it lets you know you want to do it. You might think you want to do TV and just say, I don't ever want to work in a TV station. I had friends like that who did TV internships and said, I'm going to go do digital. I'm going to go do print. That might be more my speed. So internships are important because it tells you what you really want to do and it gives you practical experience and gives you perspective about what it's really like to walk into a newsroom and work in a newsroom. So we'll definitely have summer internships that people should definitely look into and apply for. And then as far as actually making a transition to full-time work here, the number one jobs I'm always looking to fill are producer jobs. So if you if you're coming out of undergrad and you have your degree and you've had a couple internships, there occasionally we do have production assistant or desk assistant opportunities here. It's kind of always on a cycle, and those kind of cycles work the same everywhere. Like I know very well that the cycle works in DC. It's based on people either leaving or getting promoted from within. So it's kind of like always looking on a rolling basis. So I always tell people to visit our career site, nextstar .tv/careers, and you can just throw into the search bar NewsNation, and you'll see all the NewsNation jobs. And so you'll see if we have desk assistant or production assistant openings. But nextstar .tv/careers is also a good site because Nextstar, our parent company, is the largest owner of local television stations in the country. They actually just started a station there in DC, which you guys should look into as well. WDCW is a Nextstar owned station, CW50. And so they are combining the resources of what was that station in DC, but also a station they have in Hagerstown, Maryland. So they're covering the entire tri-state. And so that's another good resource. And then in terms of, again, the entry level jobs, desk assistant or production assistant, and then for a couple more experienced people that maybe have master's degrees, maybe have worked, we always have newswriter, broadcast newswriter. So you have to know how to write broadcast copy. Broadcast newswriter jobs we often have available, and then either associate producers or segment producers. And so it kind of depends on how much experience you have, whether you be an AP associate producer or whether you be a segment producer. But those folks help produce segments. So that varies from, you know, working with a reporter to get like the reporter intro and the tag for their packages, or getting elements for a reporter, or producing something like a smartboard segment where you have a reporter at a smartboard, or producing a guest interview where we're set up a guest interview. Like we're all watching, you know, on this day, you know, the situation over in England and whether, you know, Queen Elizabeth will pass. And then, you know, we'd be scrambling to do interviews on that. And so a segment producer could be working ahead on producing a segment or producing an obituary package if we don't already have an obit. So those are the types of roles that we mostly have available to us. And so I'm always happy to talk to folks and do informationals to talk more about them. I'm always happy to give them kind of tips and suggestions, always happy to give them perspective about behind the scenes. As you heard, I've done almost everything in news. There are two things I have not done: reported professionally or been a line producer, but pretty much everything else I have some insight to. And I have senior packages before, so I had to edit the package scripts. So those are kind of the jobs that I would have, and I'm happy to give more perspective if there are people that are interested on those. What else, Jackie?
So, you know, you said the more perspective. So if I were to go on Nextstar and see some positions that were specific to NewsNation, should students reach out, like apply and then reach out to you, or what is your, because recruiters like all kinds of things. What is
Yes. So my thing is read the description, make sure you're qualified for the description, then do everything the application says to do. And then, yes, if you apply for something, feel free to ping me. I'll make sure that you all have my email address. And look, there are times when I am involved in the process. There are times when I'm just being the messenger, where I'm referring the resumes to a hiring manager. So it kind of varies depending on the search. And my involvement in searches vary, and I like it that way because there are a lot of jobs I'm often asked to fill. So there's some you know, there's some roles where I'm intimately involved. I will be the person doing the initial screen. And there are other times where I'm just looking at a resume to make sure it's a decent resume and passing it on to a hiring manager, or making sure hiring managers checking their inbox and looking at the resumes that are coming in. But I'm always happy to talk to folks. And if I can provide an update, I will. If I have to punt, I will punt, but I'm always honest about it. But I always welcome people's emails just to get a gut check on where they exist in a search, or to get perspective about if they should apply for a role. And look, I'm not greedy. If you're from somewhere else in the country and Nextstar has a station there, look at that station. Literally, their stations are pretty much a lot of media markets all across the country. So I would say look there too. And we have an entry-level recruiter who looks at people who want to be like MMJs, entry-level reporters, or entry-level producers. I have a colleague who does that. So I'm happy to connect, or happy to, you know, refer to him as well. And we're a team. So I'm the only person responsible for recruiting specifically for NewsNation based here in Chicago, but we do have other recruiters tasked with other positions as well. And so we talk all the time. So they might get someone interested in a network news job. So they send me a resume, or I get someone I'm like, not quite ready for us, but they might be great for you. And so we talk all the time. The recruiting circle is small. And even people from other companies ask me if I got any resumes that have crossed my desk that I would be happy to, you know, give out with. And it depends if they're my friend or not, and if I really have someone I think will be a good fit for them. But we talk. It is a very small world. This industry is very small.
Actually, that's really interesting because it seems like such a big industry for so many students. But when you say it's small, just can you talk a
I'll
little bit
give you
more about?
I'll give you perspective. So I've been a member of the National Association of Black Journalists since I was 18 years old. Back then, my general manager, who was the first person to give me an internship, he had created the internship program in Baltimore. He said, when y'all graduate, because back then you couldn't be a college student or a high school student and join. You could be a college student, sorry, you couldn't be a high school student and join. So join at 18. He's like, join the National Association of Black Journalists. I joined when I was 18. I took my first leadership position on an organization when I was 19. I've been a member and been to every in-person convention they've had since 2006. And so we had our convention like a month ago in Las Vegas. And it was just funny to like walk through and see all the people I met throughout the course of my career. And they're all over the place. I mean, they're in local television markets all across the country. They're at newspapers, they're at national magazines. And it was kind of funny. My first boss ever was walking with me. And I was walking past, I'd like say hi to so-and-so, so-and-so. She just would look at it and like, how do you know all these people? And I'm like, that's my mentee. That's not my mentee. So you're my mentor. That's my mentee. So it's a small world and a small industry. We all know each other. Or if we don't, we know someone. And I'm not afraid to email one of my friends and ask them what they know. We text all the time. I would text my friend like, you worked here, what's the skinny on this person? So it is a very small industry because what we do is so unique and so special. And it's like 3 degrees of separation. It is very rare. I can't find someone that knows someone that knows someone that can give me some perspective about it. So look, it's a big country, a lot of newsrooms, but a lot of us are connected from associations, from colleges, from work that we've done, from stories that we're on, from just networking events, from knowing people, from being introduced years ago because someone was interested in your company. And it's all about staying in touch and keeping connected, but it's also about having a good reputation, right? Because you don't want to ever be downed by someone. And I know who to ask, who's going to give me an honest assessment, or I know who's going to give me a fluff assessment. So you have people who's going to give you the honest assessment. But yes, the business is smaller, it's smaller than you think. So it's important to have a good reputation. It's important to know how to network well. It's important to have those relationships established so that it's not, you don't need to go to someone out the blue and they don't find it rude or opportunistic. You want to have relationships that you maintain so that when you need someone, they're there and they're readily available and will make themselves available to you. Or on the off chance you haven't talked to them, but you made a good impression on them, they're willing to say a good word or kind word about you. It really is important.
Before we started, you were talking about the importance of mentorship, being a mentee, and you talked a little about networking. And I don't know if the TED Talk that you were talking about was, something related to this, but before I let you go, I want to give you the opportunity to maybe talk a little bit about those particular areas, because I think that's also helpful for students as they're creating their career path, and not just generally, but specifically in
Yeah.
journalism.
So 3 things I encourage folks to do. One is look at organizations that, whether they're affinity group, and look, these organizations are not restrictive. So you don't have to be Black to join the National Association of Black Journalists or to come to our conventions, because trust me, some of my friends I've been like, you should just come, right? But look for organizations. I've been a member of NABJ, like I said, for 18 years. And then I've also been a member of the Online News Association for a while. The great thing about these organizations are that they are professional associations that give you access to professionals. They also have student programming. So NABJ, for example, has student projects every year that allow people to do a student newscast at the convention. So you come in and you spend a week reporting on the convention in the city that they're in. So they have a TV newscast, they have a newspaper, a print edition of newspaper, and then an online website that are updated by the students, supported and mentored by professional journalists. That type of hands-on experience, like is transcendent, helps you to literally be ahead of the pack. And so many of those folks, I can name people in the DC market, for example, a good friend of mine, Jumela Banji, she's an anchor at WRC, the morning co-anchor at WRC, did student projects, like 15 years ago. And she became a friend and a mentor to me. There are other people in the market, Laurie Miller at WUSA. So these people are student projects alums that went on and had really good careers. So those are real examples I can give you there in DC where you guys are going to school. And then, so I would say join those associations. So the National Association of Black Journalists, that's the National Association of Hispanic Journalists, Asian American Journalists Association, Native American Journalists Association, Online News Association, just to name a few. And also a couple, women's Senate organizations such as, International Women's Media Foundation that you could look into and see what type of student membership they may have, or student programming, or just fellowships they may have geared towards college students or recent graduates. So that's part one. And then one of the next things I would say is there is important to know about sponsors, mentors, and advisors. So I tell people to Google sponsor or look on YouTube, sponsors, mentors, and advisors. There's a talk by Cawley Harris, who's big up at Morgan Stanley, but she wrote a book, Expect to Win, and she talks about the difference between a sponsor, mentor, and advisor. So an advisor is someone you have a casual relationship with that you may go and just ask for advice every once in a while. Mentor is someone that you have that relationship with, of a rapport, you interned with them, or they were a professor, or there's someone you were connected with that you have an ongoing relationship with. You talk to occasionally, update about your career. They're invested in you and they really know. And then a sponsor is someone who has power and authority, and they can walk your name into a room and help put you over the edge to get a position. And so that's a sponsor. And that person will help your career be elevated to the next level. So it's important to know the role of each and the importance of each, and important to know when you can kind of engage in that type of relationship with them. So I tell people to do that. And then there's a TED Talk that I highly recommend, and she also has a book out. Zane Asher is a CNN international anchor, and I'm like a huge fan of. But she had a TED Talk called "Trust Your Struggle" years ago, and I always tell people to watch it, because I really do fundamentally believe that sometimes, be honest, it is a little bit of a struggle, and you do need to trust it and kind of lean it on it. But I think her TED Talk is something I make all my mentees watch. Like when they ask me to mentor them, I'm like, go watch this TED Talk first and come back and talk to me. But she also has an accompanying book that now kind of expands on the things she talked in a TED Talk, and it's called "Where the Children Take Us" by Zane Asher. So I highly recommend those two things. And then the last thing I would say is just study the craft and the industry. So I'll tell people, look at those professional associations, like I said, NMBJ, ONA, but look at Pointer, which is one of the go-to sites for those of us in this industry. Read Pointer, look at their newsletters, look at the programming they have, look at the tips and tricks that they have, and the discussions about journalism industry and the journalism ethics. That's a really important resource. And then you kind of have to study the industry to know where the industry is going to take you. So I tell people to read. CNN has a really good, reliable sources newsletter. Tell people to subscribe to that. The one Excel's had called Media Trend, subscribe to that. And then Journalism's is a website written by a former Washington Post copywriter named Richard Prince, which tracks diversity in the media. And so he talks about, trends and people and job appointments and that sort of thing. And those are types of things. You got to know what is happening in the industry to kind of know where you want to go and take your career. And then I also said you want to know who's doing stuff, because I tell people I don't believe in role models, I believe in goal models. So I tell people go and see who your goal models are. And then I do some things like I go, and it doesn't have to be someone in the media industry. There's been people that I've seen like in banking or in leadership, because I'm a leader, right? And I'm a manager, and I want to learn how to be a better boss. And I go and I follow them on LinkedIn, or I follow them on social media. And they're my goal models. One of my goal models, Deshaunda Brown Duckett. She's the CEO of TIAA in Beck. And I spotted her maybe 6 or 7 years ago, because she handed out the winner's check at the US Open. I'm a big tennis fanatic. And I was like, who is this woman? She has to be important. She's handing out this $1 million check. And then I Googled her and found out she was a top executive at JP Morgan. And I'm like, she's interesting. Her path is interesting. She's a good leader. And she's one of those people that really active on social media and really interesting, but also intersectional and engaging. But I like her style. So she's a goal model of mine, right? And so I tell people follow goal models, and it don't have to be people you have proximity to. You may be fortunate enough to meet them one day, but they don't have to be people you have proximity to in order for them to inspire you. So I tell people pick up your goal models. So I think those are the big things that I'll say. I'm always happy to schedule permitting, schedule informations with people. I do think that we're a part of a small club being connected to Georgetown. So I do give preference to Georgetown students and alumni. So I'm always happy to, try to set up time to talk if people want to have Zoom informationals or just email back and forth, whatever. I'm always aim to make myself available.
Christopher, you are just delightful, because we've just met maybe a month ago, and it's so much information in a short period of time. I'm writing really fast, but I just want to thank you so much for joining me this afternoon and going over your career and your advice for young journalists, and just how to get involved in NewsNation or Nexstar more broadly. So for those of you who are in the recording, thank you for watching. And Christopher, if you can just hold on after the recording ends, that would be great.